So you're in Alabama. You said that they wouldn't put that there's an FBI training center in Huntsville.
Yeah. So they have Redstone Arsenal.
Yeah.
They have been trying to they've been trying to kind of partner with NASA, because NASA's up there, of course, with Huntsville. They've been partner, I guess have a federal designated area, kind of branching off of Redstone. So one of the requirements was Google Fiber. So they've got it.
Huh, that's interesting. I didn't realize they had a training area. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, I guess, but I didn't realize they had one there.
Right.
Yeah. So I grew up in, up until high school, I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And in middle school, one of our field trips was down to Huntsville, Alabama, to the Space Center there. And that was like probably one of the coolest things I did as a kid.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, my wife went there for space camp.
Oh, really?
I've never been there.
Oh, so. No way. I mean, I would tell you it's been probably 20 something years since I've been, but it was cool. I would say it's probably pretty awesome. I would check it out. I was that kid when I was a little kid. I wanted to go to space camp. There was that horrible movie that came out in the 80s or something like that. I think it was older than me, called Space Camp. And I saw that, and then I went to Huntsville, and I saw that they had a space camp, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to go. But I never had the opportunity. That's pretty cool your wife got to.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Chattanooga, I love Chattanooga.
Oh, great
How often
city.
do you go?
What's that? Say it again.
How often do you get to go back there?
Man, I haven't been back to Chattanooga, and it's been probably at least 15 years, maybe more. Well, I may have gone once while I was in the Marines. So I lived in Chattanooga until right before I went to high school. And then I moved back. My family's from Indiana, so we moved back to Indiana, and that's where I went to high school. And then while I was in Indiana, I think it was after I graduated high school, me and my buddy took a road trip to Alabama, actually, to see one of his buddies. And we stopped in Chattanooga then, and it was really cool to come back. And I actually remembered a lot of the roads. Like, I could drive around, even though I was a little kid. But, you've been on them so many times, you just naturally kind of retain that. And then I think when I was stationed in Camp Lejeune, I think my mom moved back to Tennessee, but she moved up into the north of Nashville. And I think we may have went to Chattanooga one time, or I don't really remember, but it's been a long time. But Chattanooga was always really cool. We used to go to, my dad was in the Army Reserve Center there, and we would go to Riverbend. Have you ever been to that music festival up there?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's super cool. I mean, I was a middle school kid. My dad's Army Reserve unit ran a beer and alcohol tent to raise funds for whatever. And so as a kid, I got to see all these concerts. I got to see Charlie Daniels, Santana, the Guess Who, all these crazy bands as a middle school kid. And so I think that kind of drove my passion to continue going to concerts as I got older and stuff. But it was a really cool opportunity. I always tell people Chattanooga is a great place to go, at least visit, if not even, probably still a cool place to live.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. We used to stop there, when I was a kid for vacation. And I don't know if you remember the Chattanooga Choo Choo.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we used to stop there. That was kind of a big deal when I was a kid. And now, I mean, the downtown is just thriving. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. That reminds me, I did go while I was in the Marines, because I remember taking my kid to the Chattanooga Choo Choo. As one of the things that we did as we visited that and the giant aquarium and stuff like that. I was a kid when the aquarium was built. I remember them building it and stuff. It was a cool opportunity, man. And it also, we lived right out, not in the city, obviously. We lived in the suburbs in Hickson, and then Soddy Daisy, this little town called Soddy Daisy. And we were down the... What's that?
Mountain capital of the South.
The meth capital of the South? Is that what you said?
Soddy Daisy, a lot of folks go up there to mountain bike.
Oh, mountain bike capital of the South.
Yeah.
I thought you said meth capital. I was like, damn, that's kind of depressing here.
That's down toward me.
Okay. but we lived down the river from a nuclear power plant, you know, and I was explaining to someone else literally just the other day what the TVA was, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and how they like, they're the federal people that run like all the rivers and dams and all that stuff. And, you know, growing up next to a nuclear power plant makes me as an adult be like, why don't we have more nuclear power? Like, what are we doing, you know?
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting though. Yeah. Sorry. It's a quick little background on my life, man. But thanks for Robby Watson. Thanks for coming on the podcast. You know, I think you said Tracy Offutt is the one that sent you my way. And anybody that Tracy Offutt sends my way, I think I have to take seriously, you know, because he's a solid dude. And I think he has good judgment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I saw we had been on your show 5 or 6 times, and I have I watched a couple of those episodes twice just to catch up with him, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like yeah.
Yeah, so you guys served together then?
We did. We were actually in Heavy Weapons Company 229, who retired their colors, and we went to 24. So we were both in Heavy Weapons Company, and we were both squad leaders. So I had 2 Humvees, and I believe Tracy had 2 Humvees, and then there was the tow gunners, so kind of like a cat platoon, but with Humvees instead of a little fast Jeep. So yeah, we had a build up, and I think it was the 31st MEU. So we got a chance to spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, on that ship life, you definitely get to know people.
Yeah, I would say that Tracy was probably the best mentor that I could have possibly asked for. Unbelievable guy.
That's awesome to hear. That means he's been a solid guy his whole career. He was really looked, you know, fondly upon by the enlisted Marines for sure at First Anglico, because that's where we met, was when he was the sergeant major there.
Right.
Yeah. So you had mentioned in the survey that you filled out that you and Tracy were in Hong Kong before the British relinquished their control. What was that like? Very
somber. I just remember everybody kind of being just kind of down. Not a lot of excitement. You know, I didn't feel that they wanted that to happen. They kind of knew, you know, it was inevitable. They knew what was coming. So that was probably the worst Liberty port that we had, other than, you know, getting a chance to go out. And I think we went to a zoo. You know, we got some good food, but it was just real somber. So just a weird time.
That's crazy, because I actually got to go to Hong Kong like I think 4 or 5 times while I was in. And
oh man,
I know, dude, right? I got lucky. I did 2 MEUs, and both MEUs went to Hong Kong. One of them went twice.
Yeah.
And it was just a party. Like, it wasn't somber at all. I imagine now, I don't even know if they're allowed to port there now that they've had that crackdown and stuff like that. And what I saw like last year or the year before, I think it was when COVID was kicking up, so about 2 years ago, when China like really started cracking down, I was like, man, that sucks. Like, Hong Kong was such a cool spot. This is going to ruin it. You know, like, it's going to ruin it for future deployments if that's a port call, I think, maybe. But it's probably the same feeling you had when you saw like what they were doing, you know, the British giving it up. For those that don't know, Hong Kong was a British colony for a long time. And for some reason, I think it was it in their early 90s is when they relinquished control? They said, hey, we'll no longer control this. We'll give it back to China.
Yeah, it's 95. It was 95.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Hong Kong was a super cool spot, though. I enjoyed it. Going to Kowloon, the party, the bar, the area with all the bars was Lai Kwai Fong. You know, that was like the big area where like all the Europeans and tourists and stuff would go clubbing and doing all that stuff. But it was weird going into Hong Kong, like pulling into the port. One, we had the Liberty boat, so the ship didn't actually pull up to the pier. We had to do that thing where the boat pulled alongside the ship, and you had to do that crazy walk out onto it and hope you didn't fall into the bay, which was even worse when you're coming back to the ship and you're hammered.
Absolutely.
But seeing the city itself, I've never been in a city like that. I imagine it's what like New York City is like. You know, it's how dense it is and how tall the buildings are.
Yeah, I do remember that. And it's been, God, I hate to date myself, but it's been 30 years ago almost. So I do remember some of the high points and great food. Everything was super clean. So, um, gosh, I'm trying Singapore, maybe that kind of clean,
Singapore,
where they
super
take a lot.
clean.
So very clean, great food. A lot of European influence, obviously. So the English pubs everywhere and the Irish pubs kind of unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then a lot to do there. So I mean, we didn't have a hard time finding things to do, whether it was gardens to go and look at or zoos or things like that. There was a ton of stuff to do. But yeah, I remember the Libo boat, and that was interesting. So we're clicking on that. Absolutely remember that. That was rough. And hydrocats, which were the big, catamarans or the hydrofoil that would just basically, have the big fin in the front.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool to see there. So yeah, Hong Kong, interesting.
You mentioned that you got to go in your 4 years in the Marines that you got to go to more than 20 countries. Which
Yeah,
is awesome. Like, and I've brought this up a lot of times about how these opportunities exist. Not obviously not everybody gets to do something like that, but those opportunities are out there, and it's a really great like life experience because you get an actual introduction to so many different cultures and stuff. It's way different than reading about Hong Kong in a book. Like actually walking down the street, eating food off the street, street vendors and stuff like that is way different. Or like my buddy Farrell, when he was in Malaysia, they ate monkeys and iguanas. Like it's such an interesting like I don't know, just like life experience. Is that kind of how you feel about like seeing all these different places? And what was your favorite place?
yeah. I mean, I got really, really lucky, so I do not take that for granted. I talked to friends that were at Cherry Point for 8 years or 12 years, and maybe went to two or three places over that career. So I definitely don't take it for granted. Um, I would say my favorite place, and I've talked to my wife about this. Like, hey, she asked, where should we go? All the places that you went, where do you think I would enjoy? And without a doubt, Naples, Italy. Just had everything. Mount Vesuvius, Pompeii, great restaurants. Literally walking out of one of the best restaurants you'd ever eat at in your life, and then there's steam coming out of the ground from across the street because there's ancient ruins. The straw markets where you can pretty much barter for everything. You name it. I mean, that was Naples. So I really enjoyed Naples. So if I had to choose to go back to anywhere, probably be Naples.
That's legit. I
Uh,
wanted when the pandemic kicked off, I was like hoping to go to. I had planned on going to Italy that summer because my cousin lived there, and she was like, "Yeah, just come stay with us, whatever." It was basically like, "Hey, I got free room and board. I just got to get over there and hang out." She lived
right.
in Milan. Um, she no longer lives there now. She moved to Germany, so now I have to find someone else I know or go just pay for a hotel. But that's like going to Italy is kind of on my bucket list because like you said with the ancient ruins and stuff, there's just so much like culture and history and how could you not want to go there, right?
Yeah, I mean, just walking down the road with no plans whatsoever, which is what most young Marines do, right? Castles, ancient ruins, Christian dens, at a Coliseum. It's just like every block, every 2 blocks was something like that. It's incredible. So, and I tell you, the reason that we stayed in Naples and went to like Mount Vesuvius is there at the Marine Detachment in Naples, security forces. Um, Major basically took a few of us aside that were traveling through that area. I think it was either a corporal's board or maybe we were about to jump on one of the mews that were traveling through the med to do some cross training. But he pretty much, I think we had 2 days, and he pretty much said, "Y'all are not going out drinking. Y'all can go to Rome or you can go to Pompeii." Like, okay, we really want to go drinking, but we went to Pompeii. So we basically spent a day in Pompeii, which is a huge place. I mean, we'll get into it, but I run ultra marathons, and I can remember that kicked my butt. Like a day in Pompeii, walking around that town, just looking at the ruins. It's like a city. So you can literally spend all day and not see the same thing. But then we also climb Mount Vesuvius. So really full day. And looking back, I wish I could find that major and thank him, because we would have absolutely ended up at a bar, drinking pints. So
and
little things like that.
And that's your cultural experience for Italy, getting hammered in a dark bar somewhere.
I wouldn't remember any of it. So I wish I could remember that major's name, but I absolutely thank him for making us do that.
We had a master guns on my mule, the ops chief, that always told like the new guys, like, hey, the first port, the first day in port, you're not allowed to drink. Did people listen? Probably not. But he was always like, don't take this opportunity for granted. You're in a place that you've never been. You may never come back to. No one has probably ever been here. Take the opportunity to go out and see some stuff, and then go out and party. Obviously you're going to go have a good time and get off ship and decompress, but there's way more to being in this Liberty port than getting hammered. And I mean, to be honest, like, you'd get off the ship sometimes and see someone stumbling drunk within an hour of like Liberty call, someone puking or whatever. And it's like, bro, you just ruined your entire like day, maybe even night, because you just wanted to get it as fucked up as possible, as quick as possible. And it's like, man, you're definitely, ruining this port call for yourself.
Yeah, you don't just ruin that day, you ruin the next day because you're recovering. So, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of ports. We went to Surabaya, Indonesia, and we were the first ship to pull into Surabaya in like 20 years. So there was a crowd of like 3,000 or 4,000 Indonesians. They knew that an American ship was about to pull into port. So that was interesting. We trained with the Indonesian Marines, had like a field day, tug of war, all that BS. They were super, super friendly, maybe a touch more friendly than we would have liked, but that's just kind of their culture there, So, but yeah, it was a great experience. Thailand, of course, I'm sure you've been to Thailand. That was quite an experience. Really? Yeah, Thailand, it's quite the experience.
Everybody that's gone to Thailand is like, dude, anything you've ever wanted to do in your entire life, you can probably do it in Thailand for cheap.
Yeah, that was for Cobra Gold, so there wasn't a ton of liberty, but, they were like, hey, if you get tired of your MREs, just hang out, because at some point, somebody will ride up on a bicycle with rice and Cokes. And for like $1, you can eat as much rice, this is like stir fried rice or something, as much rice and Coke as you want. So after 3 or 4 days, in Thailand in the summer, that was nice. So little things like that.
Oh, for sure. I was talking to one guy that had gone on Liberty there, and he's like, yeah, we paid a guy $30, and he was basically our driver / tour guide for 2 days. He's like, there's 4 of us, and he'd just come pick us up and take us wherever. And he's like, that's how much it cost almost nothing to go there and just hang out and do stuff. I'm sure, the word has gotten out to a lot of people, so it's probably gone up a little bit. But Thailand was a spot I did want to go to. I didn't have the opportunity to. Australia was a place I wanted to go. I didn't have an opportunity to. They teased us saying that we were going to go to Vietnam, and then the Vietnamese people were like, nah, the ship's too big. I can't pull into this port, which I don't know if that's true.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. We were in the LHD, the big deck, but I still don't think, I think it was more of a, we just don't want you to come kind of deal. Singapore was great though. You mentioned Singapore before. Singapore is super clean because everyone knows, the big thing is that you'll get like caned if they catch you like littering, or if you spit gum on the ground. You're not even allowed to dip or anything like that while you're there. And I think I got to go to Singapore like 3 times, and that was another like really awesome experience. You go to the restaurants that have all the fish tanks out front, and you pick what you want to eat out of one of the tanks or whatever. It's all these weird ass fish you've never seen and stuff. But yeah, man, the port calls are great. Do you ever feel like you don't want to talk about going on all these like to all these different countries and stuff like that with people you know? Because and the reason I say this is because we've talked about it on here before about how it's like how can people back home relate to that, you know, or one that or two you don't want to feel like you're rubbing it in or constantly like the one up guy like, oh yeah, I've been there, oh yeah, I've done that, oh yeah, you know, did you ever run into that?
Oh, that's totally it. You don't want to rub in the fact that on taxpayer money you went to over 20 countries, but then even with even talking with Marines, there's just a ton of folks that maybe went to 2 or 3 ports over 4, 8, 12 years. Who knows? I got really, really lucky because I went security forces in Europe, so we were hopping around all over, the Med. And then when I went to the fleet and went to 2-9 in Pendleton at San Mateo, they were building up for a Westpac. So I got to do both in 4 years. So, man, I just felt like I had done so much, and that's probably one of the reasons I didn't re-enlist because I've heard the horror stories. And I'm like, there's no way that my next 4 years are going to be anything near close to what I just did. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I got really so yeah, I don't talk about it a lot just because, just like you said, it kind of feels like you're almost rubbing it in.
Isn't that unfortunate though? Like that you can't just like, oh yeah, you know, like convey these experiences.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like Spain. You're going to hate me for this, but when I was stationed in Spain, Rota is about an hour, maybe 2 hours from Torremolinos, or we call it T-Town. And Torremolinos is like Daytona Beach or whatever you have in California. It's where all the spring breakers go. And I'm not talking about just Spanish spring breakers. I'm talking about every Scandinavian country. That's where they go for spring break. So, we were 2 hours from there. That's where we spent probably every other weekend or every other, we had 3-3-3. So we had 3 days off in between cycles. So that's where we would head. So,
Yeah. I've heard,
tax money. Can't complain.
I've heard Rhoda is a great time from people that have been there.
Yeah.
It's obviously not everybody has an opportunity to go to somewhere like Rhoda. That's a very like niche kind of base to get stationed at.
Right.
But to have that opportunity and that's awesome that you guys from there you bounced out to different places. You know, because there's nothing worse than a Marine or anyone that gets sent somewhere and they just sit in their room and don't do anything or just drink their days away or whatever instead of like going out and like, oh, hey, I'm in Okinawa. Let me jump off and fly to here. Or let me go here. Or in Europe, you guys can just take the train all over the place. Did you see people that didn't take advantage of like being, in an awesome place, like just sit around rather than go out and do stuff?
Yeah, you definitely had your guys that stayed at the barracks. I'm sure that hasn't changed at all.
No.
You had your workout guys that they couldn't miss a day working out, so they would always stay back. The super fit guys, I should say, that you weren't peeling them away from the barracks. But for the most part, we all pretty much went out. Not every single time. You just couldn't afford to do it, really. But I would say every couple of times, you would venture out and try to get as far away from the base as you could. I'm sure that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I know that's how it was, just about everywhere I was stationed. As far as you could get away from the base, that was where you were going to have your best luck, when you were out on the town. So.
Now, being part of security forces in Europe, were you guys doing a lot of cross training with other countries there, or was it mostly like were you doing rotations of like, I don't know, actual work?
Yeah, so I just talked with one of my buddies this morning. Again, it's been 30 years, so I just wanted to refresh on some of the things that we did in case it came up. And Muse would come through that area, and since we were in Rhoda, and then I was also stationed in Crete, Greece. So after about 9 months in Rhoda, they needed 4 or 5 additional bodies in Crete. So the newest guys that got to Rhoda, they sent us to Crete. And that was another Marine detachment there. So again, Crete, Greece, another Scandinavian resort destination. So struggling, taking one for the team. Um, but yeah, I mean, both places were fantastic. Um, can't complain, not one bit.
Yeah, so when I was most people that were in during the global war on terrorism, a lot of them never got to go to any kind of deployments like that or any other countries other than Iraq and Afghanistan. I talked to one of my buddies, and it's like his Marine Corps experience is completely different than mine.
Right.
Michael Hanthorne, who's been on a couple times, I think he's been one of the first 10 episodes. He talks about his time in Fallujah. He was a motor T guy attached to him. They made him go in as mortuary affairs and clean up the dead insurgents as they were clearing through Fallujah. Yeah, so that experience, and he did that twice. He did 2 rotations to Iraq as motor T, getting blown up and all this other stuff. And mine, I did get to go to Iraq. I did go to Afghanistan, but I also got the opportunity, which I hated somewhat, to be on the MEU. And when I first heard about the MEU, I was like, oh, cool. Like, this would be a change of pace from like going to Iraq or going to Afghanistan. Maybe this will be a cool booze cruise. And I'd been on the East Coast the whole time, and all I'd ever heard about was going on these med floats, going to Greece, going to Spain, going to all these places. And then I obviously came out to Camp Pendleton, and that's where I went on my MEU from and did a Westpac, which was also cool, but I think I would have enjoyed Europe better. Like, Asia is super cool, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity to see some of the places I got to see, but I do wish I would have gotten to do a little bit of more time, checking out the European continent, which is kind of why I guess I'm wanting to get over there to at least go to Italy and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely should go to Italy. Italy is definitely that by far to me in Europe is the place to go. It's got everything. So, and I say that now that I'm married and I'm in my late 40s. That's where I would go. Now there were other places I would say if you're in your early 20s that may be a little bit more conducive to what you want, but Italy, as far as like just going and being able to experience the culture, that is absolutely the place to be. I had a layover in Amsterdam. I had a great travel agent. To make a long story short, when I was stationed in Spain, my parents had booked a timeshare in Spain, pretty close to Rota, actually over there near Torremolinos. Now transferred to Crete, so they still had that week. So I talked my CO into letting me go back to Spain. So the travel agent in Crete had me laying over in Amsterdam for like 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic. So that was an experience. So yeah, Amsterdam was quite the experience.
Damn, man, you've gone to all these awesome places. What was it like in Greece with like another ancient culture? Like, there's so much history there. There's so much like early mankind, stuff going on there.
Yeah, so we were in Crete, which is obviously a pretty big liberty port for just about every possible ship that was coming through that area, whether it was American or Swedish or Finnish or who knows. But so whenever we would go out into town, there was always someone out in town. Again, whether it was Italians or Spanish or Australians, Americans. So you know how that goes. There's a lot of camaraderie there, and there was also a lot of non-camaraderie, i.e., and for the most part, we did pretty good. But there were a few instances over the year that I was there to where we got restricted, to where we couldn't go out for 3 or 4 weeks. We were the small Marine detachment there. We had 3 platoons. So we kind of owned the place, but yeah, some great memories there for sure. It was the culture and the food, the people, the Greek people or the Cretians. Their history is phenomenal if you read about Crete and what happened during World War II. But their history and just the people, fantastic. I mean, I had a couple of Marine buddies that ended up marrying girls from Crete, and I'm jealous because the food that we were eating, they get to eat that all the time. It's phenomenal, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got really. But then you take somebody like me that had a chance to go to 20 plus countries, and you always want what you don't have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got deployed to combat zones, and looking back, I mean, that was the piece that has always really bothered me. You train, you train, you train. The reason that you join, and you never get to see that action. So, um, I've heard some of your podcasts, and you don't necessarily want to put yourself in an environment where you lose buddies or anything, but for a Marine, that's where you want to be. And there's that piece that's missing for me. So, man, when I listen to those podcasts, it makes me real emotional knowing what you guys had. So there's a ton of folks like me that served during those fun times, that really envy you guys, respect the hell out of you, because we know what you went through and what you're still going through. But yeah, I mean, that's you always want what you can't have. I mean, I guess that's the thing.
Yeah, especially you were Marine infantry too. So that's
Yeah.
literally the job. It wasn't like you signed up for supply and you're like, "Oh no, I didn't get a chance to go on a combat deployment." Like, you were
So, man,
that was the job.
I joined in high school. I want to say it was early 12th grade, so maybe August, September of 1990. And that is when Desert Shield started. And about half the guys in my class, I went to a small private school, maybe 40 in my graduating class, but half the guys joined a military branch, whether it was Air Force, Marines, Navy, whatever. Um, so delayed entry program for about a year. I want to say I went into boot camp September of 1991, and I want to say by the time I got to boot camp, it was pretty much wrapping up, if it hadn't already wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
So at high, this is why I joined. I want to go kick ass. Had a pretty good senior year. Hey, he's going in the Marines. And by the time I went to boot camp and got out of boot camp, it was pretty much already over. So really, the only thing that I can remember during my 4-year stint was, of course, Somalia in 93, 92, 93. And where I was at in Rhoda, I think we upped maybe the DEFCON one condition to where, they wouldn't allow us to go off base. And they had something going on up in Macedonia. I think that was up in I want to say that was Bosnia, Herzegovina area-ish. But that's pretty much it. And then we had one, and Tracy could probably, back me on this, but I want to say it was 94. Saddam did something pretty stupid, and we had a recall. And I think I heard one of Tracy's episodes talking about the recall when he was with 2-4 or 2-9, 2-4. I can't remember exactly when we had the recall, but we were on Liberty, and we were called in. It was the weekend, I believe. And, they were basically scheduling us to go get our vaccinations. They told us you can call home, but don't go into a lot of detail. But we were going to Iraq, and everybody was just pumped up, man, because I'm telling you, 1991 was really the last time that anything had happened. So here we are right on the tip of the spear, about to deploy, because we already worked up. We were maybe 2 or 3 months away from our MUSOC. And everybody was calling their parents, like, hey, I can't tell you a lot, but we're going to Iraq. And then as soon as we got to that point to where we were about to start getting vaccinations, bam, that was it. Clinton decided to launch about 40 Tomahawks, and that was it. So there we go. Right back to the MUSOC, did a Westpac, and that was it, man. So
That's a bummer too, because you came in after the Gulf War and stuff. So then you got to listen to the stories from all the guys that did deploy, right? All your seniors, like, you weren't there, man.
yeah, and I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but when I come out of security forces, security forces, it's dog and pony show. You know how it is. But you're pretty you're pretty clean. You know, there's not a lot of rough edges left when you get through with security forces. So when you come into the fleet, unless you're just really screwed up, you're probably going to take a leadership position pretty soon. So within about a week, they made me a vehicle commander, and these guys in 29 had just come back from Somalia. So that was, you know, I'm sure that's still the same way today, but that was, had to be real careful there because I was, you know, security forces guy. Of course, you have that stigma, right?
Yeah, that stigma's still there, man.
Stigma's still there, man. I heard that on some of your podcasts, but yeah, you had that stigma, but you know, you just, you know, you do the right thing and you respect their boundaries. And I found what worked for me is just kind of using their pride in a good way. Like, hey, man, you know, I know you understand the Mark 19, or I know you understand the 50 cal. I know you understand the M60 Echo 3, which later changed to the 240 Gull. I know you understand these weapon systems. You know, just, you know, help me, you know, understand kind of what you need, and you know, it's just being able to listen. So it was a pretty good transition. And then soon after, you know, Tracy come on board. Then another security forces guy at Bangor, Washington, come on board. So we had a really good platoon, heavy weapons platoon there. So got to do Bridgeport, cold weather training. So Bridgeport was phenomenal.
Yeah,
Got to do cat.
let's talk about Bridgeport, because I don't think I've had anybody come on and talk specifically about Bridgeport. For those that don't know, that's Pickle Meadows up there in Bridgeport, right outside of the tiny ass town of Bridgeport, California, is Marine Corps base Bridgeport, or is it Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Center, something like that. It's at like just at or over, just a little over 6,000 feet elevation, the base camp, like the squad bays and the chow hall. Also, the Bridgeport chow hall is probably the best chow hall I've been to in the Marine Corps. Like, it's so good because they want you to eat a bunch of like good stuff because you're about to go hump up and down mountains. I didn't have to do that because I was there for a different reason, but I know that you guys that go through that training. So let's talk about Bridgeport cold weather training, because Bridgeport is in the Sierra Nevada mountains, which means they get a shit ton of snow as well.
So one of the most beautiful places in the country, again on taxpayer money. If I were to pick somewhere to go on vacation in California, it would probably be that area.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I mean, just absolutely pristine. And of course, you know, anything Marine Corps ruins that aspect. Um, so it was my first experience having open shitters. So literally there were no partitions. So it was just a line of shitters. And this was 1994. So it wasn't terribly long ago, but out of all the places I've been in the Marine Corps, that was the first experience where I had, you know, this, you know, line of shitters and, hey, how are you? We basically, and I don't know if you remember the old, the big canvas tents, like the huge tents about the size, I don't know, probably 1,000 square feet, just huge tents. And then the buck stoves would go up through the canvas, just monstrosities. So that was kind of the base camp where we would do our, you know, base of operations. And then from there, you would go out on patrols. I remember Tracy. We, or I don't even know what to call him. We'll call him Sergeant Major Offutt. Anyway, Tracy. God, I can't think I was going to say. You're going to have to edit this out, man.
I'm not going to edit any of this out.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's okay. So we had a really bad winter storm come through there. And I want to say that we had to pretty much shelter in place for like 2 days. And the MREs, they come in these big white packs, right? And they were supposed to be calories in a regular MRE. They had M&Ms, you know, Snickers bars, you name it. They were phenomenal. But we had to shelter in place for like 2 days. And I can just remember thinking back that was some of the best sleep that I ever had in my life, because we had these huge trenches dug in the snow. And then every 20 yards, you would have your big snow cave dug out. And they pretty much just told us to shelter in place. So you can just imagine the snow falling in the Sierra Nevadas. And we had plenty of gear. You know, you had the big Mickey Mouse boots, the big plastic boots that would make your feet sweat no matter how cold it was. You know, we had plenty of gear, so it was pretty comfortable. I don't remember ever getting like to a point where I was really cold, but lots of sleep. So 2 days, shelter in place. We did a lot of ski oaring. I can't remember the exact pronunciation. That's basically where, you know, they have the rope. You put something kind of down between your legs, and you're on cross country skis. So it's basically your whole squad following some sort of track. So that was fun. They had a regular ski lift, you know, with the disc that you put between your legs that would pull you up, and then you would ski down the hill with your cross country skis that don't turn worth a damn. And then a lot of patrolling, you know, Law, which was a lube that we used for the 50 cals, and Mark 19's M60 lubricant all weather. So it come in a big tube and it looked like white gunk. We used that. So yeah, man, it was a good time.
When you guys were skiing, were you guys skiing with gear, like with your weapons and stuff like that? Or was it just like an introductory, like, hey, let's get you out on these skis?
But everywhere you went, no matter what you did, you had your weapons. Of course, that hadn't changed much, I hope. Then we had survival classes where we would drink like pine needle tea, where they would boil like pine needles. Great class. I say we were there for maybe 2 weeks. I lost a shit ton of weight, like just because you don't have to do nothing, but just it being that cold, your body requires so many more calories. So that's a great place to go in case anybody ever wants to go to that school. The bad part of that training is 53 went down. Basically was landing and had whiteout conditions and clipped the top of a pine tree and went down, and the co-pilot was killed.
Oh, fuck.
And I actually talked to our battalion CO. He's on my Facebook, which isn't weird at all. But I talked to him and said, hey, how you doing, sir? Blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, I said, do you remember? Because I started thinking, and there's not a lot of stuff on the internet, right? So I started Googling and trying to find articles about that, and I couldn't find anything. So I asked, I found CEO on the internet and asked him if he remembered that. He said, oh, absolutely. He said that was actually the crash that changed the Marine Corps aviators' helmet design. That if the helmet design had been like it is modern day, the co-pilot would have survived. Since I found articles on it, 1994 Pickle Meadow helicopter crash, CH-53. I think there were maybe 5 people on board, and of course just the one co-pilot was killed. So I remember that, pretty somber. They made us kind of shelter in place that day. And then the very next day, we actually marched right by the site. So that was, that was kind of somber. But otherwise, Bridgeport was phenomenal. Highly, highly recommend if anybody ever has a chance to go there.
I got an awesome opportunity as a Lance. I was a PFC, actually. I got promoted to Lance Corporal while we were there. I was a PFC. When I first came in, I was a mechanic, as those that listen to the podcast know. And I was part of the EFSS ITV test team, which is that's the Expeditionary Fire Support System internally transportable vehicle. So it's a little Jeep looking truck that pulled around a 120 millimeter mortar. And we went up to Bridgeport to just test it in high altitude, like driving up the mountains and shit and on those trails and stuff like that, and just kind of see how it performed. But when we showed up, this was summertime. It was July, beginning of July. We showed up. It was actually the 4th of July, 96 was going on. So we get to to Bridgeport, and they're like, hey, there's literally nobody on base. It's a 96. you know, we're going to get you guys a limo van and you guys can go down to the actual town of Bridgeport and hang out if you want. And we're like, oh, fucking sick, you know? And so we go down to the town, and it's a super small, like, I guess high mountain town. It's a ranching town.
Right.
It's a there's like there's 2 or 3 hotels, and they all shut down except for one in the wintertime because they get like 10 feet of snow. But there's like cattle ranches all around it and stuff, and they were having a 4th of July parade and like rodeo and all that stuff, you know. So this like cool Western, like, you know, like Yellowstone shit you see on TV, but it was like, you know, this is like real, like these guys do this stuff. And so we actually had a really great time doing that. We got to go to the rodeo for free. They're like, "Oh, you guys are Marines, come on in." We were drinking, hanging out. There were people that were doing the some nasty hikers, man. They smelled horrible. They were doing the Pacific Crest Trail, just coming in.
That's what I said. The hippie town for like the PCT for sure.
Yeah, it's a rest over. So we were talking to all these people that were there, like spending a couple days, like resting and refitting before they push back out. I think they had an injured person, and they were all, you could tell they were like, man, we might have to cut this person. And that person's like, oh, I don't want to leave. You know, it's one of those kind of weird situations for them. And then we went back dude, Bridgeport was crazy. One of the infantry guys that was there, we lost him. We're like, where'd this dude go? We couldn't find him. We all went back to camp. We came back the next day to one of the bars, and he's hanging out with all these people with different clothes on. He ended up going to some house party and like becoming friends and spent the night, and then they let him borrow clothes, and he's back out with them, and he's like, hey, what's up, guys? Like, it was...
That's the Sierra Nevadas for you.
Yeah, man, it was a good time. And then we, you know, obviously we got into the actual training and driving up and down the mountains. And it's like, it's crazy. For people that have never been in the Sierra Nevadas, the mountains are, you know, they're legit. And we actually rolled a vehicle over down a hill. Luckily, everybody was okay out of it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a super cool spot. I guess it's really well known in the spring and summertime. People go up there for... trout fishing or fly fishing, you know. It's a pretty well-known spot for that as well.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of the instructors, and they didn't hate it, for sure. Lots to do there if you're an outdoorsman. Mm-hmm. So that would, if I would have re-enlisted, that sounded really lucrative to me because I love that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, one of the snipers that was with the infantry unit I was with, I think it was 8th Marines that was part of that test project. One of the snipers was like, hey, what's up? Like talking to the instructors while he was there. And I think he actually got orders before we left because he was like, hey, I'm coming up on a re-enlistment. I'm looking for a next duty station. Like, this would be sick. You know, like, how could you not love this? Because he was an outdoors guy and stuff like that. And yeah.
Yeah. I tell you, man, it's just those little niche places that you know, if you search hard enough, they're out there. So, you know, and Cax was about the exact opposite of Bridgeport, pretty much. And I'm sure it sucks now, but you know, thing I remember about Cax is being in short sleeve shirts around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and then by 3 o'clock in the afternoon it was like snowing and hailing and all kind of shit. So I'm sure that hasn't changed too much. That was Joshua Tree National Forest, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
the coldest I've ever been is in 29 Palms. The most miserable.
Really?
The most miserable. I mean, I've been to Alaska in the wintertime. I've been, you know, a lot of places. I'm from Indiana. You know, and the coldest I've ever been was sitting on an OP in 29 Palms, just eating the wind. It was November of 2010, and it was fucking freezing ass cold. And we had a sustained like 30 mile an hour winds with like higher gust. And our gunny was like, "Hey, you guys are doing call for fire from 2100 to 06." So we were up in this just fridge. It was one of the few times I almost ever radioed down and was like, and to get us off the OP, because I was like, these dudes might get hypothermia. Like this, we're in like a really not good situation right now. But we fucking toughed it out through the night, and then the next day we came down off the mountain, because it wasn't like one of the established OPs at 29 Palms. It was like, hey, here's the impact area. Go create a patrol order and go patrol somewhere where you can visibly see that impact area and you're working artillery all night. So we hiked up some random ass mountain, and
Right.
the next day when we came down, Gunny Klein was like, bro, he's like, I was in the lake bed in the back of the Humvee, like he was doing the approving fire missions and stuff. He's like, the Humvee was shaking so much from the wind. He goes, I know you guys were miserable. And I'm like, dude, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, we were so fucking cold up there. And that is the coldest I've ever been in my life. Most miserable I've ever been.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, obviously, you know, listening to your podcast, I know most of what you've done. You can appreciate this. My platoon commander in Crete, Frank Donovan, who is now the commander for 2nd MEF, I believe. He was a lieutenant at the time, and you know, Silver Star recipient from Desert Storm. Hard charger. I mean, we all loved him. We would have died for that man. I mean, something else. But the training that he was able to get for us was incredible. And as a Lance Corporal, less than 2 years in, 0331, 8152 Security Forces guy, he took us to, and of course, all the details up to this point, kind of irrelevant. I don't remember much, but I do remember learning a 9-line brief and then calling in a 9-line brief for a Harrier pilot who basically zoomed right over our position on that mountaintop. And he gave, I want to say there was probably 8 of us. And every one of us that went there that day had a chance to do a 9-line brief and see that Harrier pilot come right over. So incredible. Now, I didn't remember anything to that, but just little things like that. If you got the right commander, they can make stuff happen, especially in security forces. I mean, the budget was probably incredible and not a ton of guidelines, rules, regulations. Mm-hmm. So we're able to do stuff like that. But, you know,
dude, it's hard to beat a good day on the OP when you got pilots coming in doing low passes for you and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was incredible. I'd say
when we would go out and train, when all the JTACs would go out and train, at mm-hmm. least 90% of the pilots did a show of force or a little low pass before they took off. They'd come in, do all the bombing runs, gun runs, and all that stuff, and it'd be like, all right, request panel check on your way out, and you know, and they would just some of them wouldn't be too low, but some of them would come in. I got a video. I'll have to post it up again at some point, but it's where we were in Gila Bend, Arizona, and we bet this A-10 pilot he couldn't blow over our cami netting. And
oh wow!
I've got a video of him coming in like right at eye level, and then pulls up just at the last second and comes over us. And about a second after he passes, all the wind catches up and blows the cami netting down. Paul Smith's in the video getting a face full of dirt and stuff like that. But yeah, he won that bet.
So cool. That's cool, man.
Dude, it's hard to complain, man. I always told people, I'm like, man, I can't be mad about my job. I go out and conduct an air show. You know, I'm like, hey, fly there, fly here, bomb that, shoot this. All right, do a low pass. That's cool. You know, like it's
yeah, man. Until I saw Tracy retiring, because you know, 90 era Marines, you know, we just didn't have what you have now as far as the capability of keeping up with people. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, a lot of folks just completely disappeared. Like there's just no way to contact them. And finally, me and Tracy caught up with each other, and then I saw where he was retiring. I'm like, damn. Which is a whole nother story. Like, man, if you'd have stayed in, type of deal. But Anglico, I was like, what the frick is Anglico? And I started, you know, researching Anglico. That's pretty badass, man. That seemed like a pretty good job to be in.
Yeah, Anglico is like it's such a unique unit. The mission set, for those that don't know, the mission of Anglico is to be the liaison element for non-Marine units. So let's say, like in Afghanistan, we're out there fighting, and there's a British unit, and they need JTACs or they need forward observers, and they could possibly be supported by American or Marine-specific artillery or aircraft. Well, Anglico comes in to be that connection so that they have that kind of fire support. There's a long standing relationship with the UK's 148 battery. When those guys come over to train with us, it's like, hey, what's up? Hey, blah, blah, blah. Like guys know each other. The sergeant major knew our ops chief from when they deployed together in the Gulf War, So there's that kind of thing where you're just working with these awesome guys overseas like that. Or in Afghanistan, there were different missions. Like one of the big ones was the Georgian Liaison teams. They would go out to be the fire support specialists for the Georgian Liaison teams.
Wow.
So the Georgian Liaison teams are it's a kind of like an advisor team of Marine infantry and supply, everybody you'd have on like an advisor team to help the Georgian battalion run their stuff and make sure everything's seamless. The Anglico guys came in to be the fire supporters and would basically go on every foot patrol with these guys and stuff because they had their own battle space. The Georgians did. And the Georgian commanding officer would approve their fire support and stuff like that. Another thing guys did in Afghanistan and Iraq were work with special operations units. I know guys that worked with British SAS. I know guys that worked. My team actually got to go after I left the team to get fucking sent to the MEU. Super butthurt about this. My team got tapped to go on the next MEU, and they got attached to a SEAL team and went into Iraq to do work against ISIS. So Anglico is one of those things. It's not a special operations unit. Any 0861, 0621 or artillery officer, whatever, can get sent there. But because they work in these small teams, and we know the different kinds of people that we could be tasked to work with, there's a natural pressure to be better than you normally would. And everyone's cross-trained on everything. You're training radio operators. One of my best JFOs, the Joint Fire Observers, the guys that can do call for fire and talk to aircraft, was a radio operator. Just because he took to it and enjoyed it. And, we would learn comm and we would learn medical and vice versa. Because when the Anglico unit, when you deploy, when your SALT, your supporting arms liaison team, this, 18-man team or whatever, deploys, you're not with everybody. You're on your smaller team, your firepower control team, which is like 4 or 5 guys. And then you get attached to a unit by yourself. So now that 4 or 5 person element has to go out and be self-sustaining and be the fire support experts for whoever they get attached to, no matter what, so it's a really interesting, unit to be a part of. The fun, like you said, with security forces, the funding is just, we had all the same gear that anybody would want. Like, it wasn't like, I didn't need any of my SIF, my stuff from supply, from the central supply, like your normal issue, because when you get to Anglico, they literally give you everything else but upgraded versions of it. Or you can choose. There's like 3 or 4 packs you can choose from depending on what kind of mission you're going on. Hey, here's the wrist GPS. Hey, here's your Mitch helmet. Before everyone, I think they're all getting Mitch helmets now, but here's a Mitch helmet. Here's just all these different sleeping bags and what you were issued by the Marine Corps, like all this different stuff. And there was money for that, and there was money for ammo. So we were out shooting. I've talked about it. The most I ever shot at one time, I took my team out of my team and some headquarters guys. It was like 20 something of us, less than 30 for sure. And we had 20,000 rounds of 5.56 and 50 cal. I mean, imagine that. As a 90s Marine, what would that have been like if someone showed up and was like, here's 20,000 rounds for like a platoon? That would have been a huge deal.
Yeah.
You're talking 20 something people. And we shot it all in like a day and a half, It's just one of those opportunities I'm so grateful that I got. And the guys that did way, I mean, I didn't do anything at Anglico. I was the SALT chief, and we went on a MEU and stuff like that. Plenty of those dudes went to Iraq and Afghanistan and just did good work and put out a good reputation for the unit and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the guys there, especially the JTACs and the senior guys, want to like protect the legacy. You don't want to show up. You are the fire support expert. You can't show up and not be good. So it's a constant pressure to be better,
So it's funny, on our MUSA, the most important guy in heavy weapons platoon, I don't know, several times 10 times, 20 times was a dragon gunner that somehow Tracy and our company sergeant commandeered was a mechanic. And Lance Corporal Jerose, and that son of a gun could pretty much fix anything. And we basically went to shore on LCACs. I guess they still have LCACs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so LCACs, pretty much breaks everything. Salt, whatever. So LCACs were horrible, but that's pretty much our transport to shore. So a bunch of shit broke, everything rusted. Lance Corporal Jerose, I want to say he transferred from OT, or I don't remember, but the guy was very mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
But he fixed so much shit on that MUSOC. I mean, like, platoons were like begging to have him, and he was heavy weapons. Tracy had him like heavy weapons. And I've heard Tracy on some of your podcasts, like, yeah, I got this guy over here in, admin and legal, and I got this guy over here in supply. He did that shit back when I was there. Like, he was just a squad leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was daring people to make, his small unit successful. And it sounds like he did that all the way to the top. It was pretty neat to see. And Tracy also, by the way, could give himself a perfect flat top.
I believe it.
Using literally perfect flat top in a mirror by himself, never paid for a haircut. It was incredible.
I never understood the people that could cut their own hair. I would have saved so much money over the years, but I could never. I didn't want to attempt it because I didn't want to have one of those shit ass haircuts for a week or two while I was trying to figure out how to do it.
And Tracy drove a pink Beetle Bug, and I guess he's still into bugs now.
Oh yeah,
but drove a bug, and people used to give him hell. But then his kind of go-to line was, "Hey, I'm confident about my manhood. How about you?"
Tracy's hilarious. He's still got the bug. He's got the Volkswagen bus now also. His bug is super cool though.
So this is Tracy back when he was a sergeant. And I want to say, he was a squad leader. He probably could have ran our heavy weapons platoon no problem. And Staff Sergeant Nyquist had just come off the drill field. So, I mean, I guess it was his for the taking. But for all intents and purposes, Tracy pretty much did most everything.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Sergeant Nyquist. Tracy pretty much did everything. And one of the things that I remember, numerous things, but one thing that stuck with me almost 30 years is Ichi ni san chi go roko sechi hachi kuju. That's 1 through 10 in Japanese. You know how I learned that? Because Tracy did not let us do calisthenics in English. He made us do it in Japanese.
Oh, really?
And that has stuck with all these years. I don't know, Ohio gozaimasu, konnichiwa, but I can count 1 through 10 because Tracy Offit made us do calisthenics in Japanese. But it's just little things about him why he was such a great leader.
Yeah, what you're talking about too, like that, building relationships to empower the unit really is something that you learn over a couple years, right? After being in for a little bit, when you mature a little bit. Because it's funny, like initially when you talk to infantry dudes, like the boots, it's all like fucking pogues, blah blah blah. Like these fucking, they don't want to have anything to do with anybody but infantry guys. But I think as they get older, they're like, wait, like I need supplies help. Like I need stuff. I need Motor T's help. It doesn't help me at all to be a dick to them. It doesn't help to be, like, hey, if I know the admin clerk, maybe when I go on leave this week, it won't get charged. It's like stuff like that you find out. And it's like, that's something I encourage everybody to do, is to just try to, not only in the Marine Corps, but in just life in general, be a nice person, build relationships, because you never know when you can help somebody out or they can help you out. It's one of those things. That's how things happen in life, is through these networking and like relationships with other people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, looking back, there's something called emotional intelligence, and it's something that I've learned in business
Mm-hmm.
since I've before. And emotional intelligence is much more important than an IQ. Emotional intelligence is being able to, read folks, read the room. You've heard it before. It's being able to remain calm under pressure, not get emotional, be logical, be rational, be able to communicate properly, be able to teach to different learning styles. Some people are kinesthetic, they're hands on. Some people are verbal. They like to hear things. Some people are read write. They like to be able to read it 2 or 3 times and then they understand it. And emotional intelligence is something that comes with age over the years. But I think you can probably agree that a lot of guys have that at a very young age. And in the military, you see that in a lot of the teams. Like when you see a 23-year-old guy that's in the pipeline of recon, or what do they call it these days? It's not force recon anymore.
Well, they still have Force Recon, but they have MARSOC, the Raider Battalion.
Raiders, yeah. So that's what. So you got guys that are in the Raider pipeline, and they're 22, 23 years old. But when you talk with them, it's like talking with a 40-year-old, guy that's been around the block forever. It's like, how in the hell does this kid? How does he have that emotional intelligence? And some people are just born with it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe upbringing, but I think some people just mature earlier, and those guys tend to find their way into the teams at an early age. A lot of guys just never get it. They're 40, 50 years old and they're still raising hell, still acting like idiots. So, looking back, those guys that got it and those guys that had, high emotional intelligence performed very well, and they, continued to perform well throughout their careers.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
wish I definitely wished I would have stayed in. Of course, it would be a different life, and I appreciate the life that I have. But looking back, I really enjoyed it. I had great times. Of course, with 9/11, that would have changed. So there's no telling how my life would have turned out at that point. But yeah, man, just looking back, it's definitely something I missed. I miss the camaraderie for sure.
I think a lot of people. I think that's something that a lot of people experience when they get out. Is I've talked about it. It's like name another job where you like live with the people you work with. You go out to dinner with them. You go to breakfast with them. You work out with them,
Yeah.
and then you do your actual job together all day. So it's like you're with these people all day long, and they become closer than your actual family because who spends that much time with their actual family? Like nobody does. And it's not, and you're also forced to deal with people you wouldn't normally like deal with, or interact with people you wouldn't normally interact with, because hey, when so and so joins the squad, so and so's in the squad. There's no, I don't like this dude, or I don't like where he's from, or whatever. That just can't exist. So it's like, hey, he's part of the squad. You got to bring them into the fold and stuff like that. And if they're a shitbag or whatever, yeah, you might fucking be pissed at them or ignore them or whatever, but they're still part of the squad. You still have to live with them, work with them, eat with them, and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think I got really lucky. I was 20 years old when I was a squad leader. I had guys that were, 18, 19 years old. We also had guys that were 30 years old too.
Mm-hmm.
The military, after they realized that, their career wasn't going in the right direction. So I got really lucky in the fact that I had like a Tracy Offit that said, hey, you need to knock that shit off. That's not cool. So he was a great mentor. And man, First Sergeant Mackin, who was the poster child Marine, just huge up top, built, skinny runner's legs, and smoked Marlboro Reds. And drove like a 1972 Dodge pickup truck. So First Sergeant Mackin, he did a favor for me early on. You know how it is. Marines get into a little nitpicky stuff. So he did me a favor, but looking back, that was basically his in for reenlistment. So there toward the end of my 4 years, every time he would see me walking his way, he would make it a point to come over there and grab me by my collar and like, "Hey Watson, you know, what's going on with your reenlistment?" So I did reach.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was the headphones.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't remember what we were talking about. I could hear you, and then it like went choppy for a second, then I got real low, and I remember you saying you were like one, blah 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 blah, and you started saying something. You're like two, yeah.
So maybe let's see. Maybe I was saying there was a couple of things in the Marine Corps that I was always skeptical of. One is when I retook the ASVAB.
Mm-hmm.
Score was much higher than it was in high school. So I'm like, maybe that's like a reenlistment tactic. Hey, you scored so high on the ASVAB, you can pretty much do any job you want if you reenlist. And then two, the more I've talked to people, the more I've realized that 3 mile PFT may not have always been 3 miles, but I won't go into detail on that.
Yeah, not always, right?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, you got to figure it's kind of, in their interest for better scores. But with the ASVAB test, when I retook it, I basically went to counter intel, and I interviewed with a counter intel, I guess, company. I don't know if it's company first sergeant. Whoever I interviewed with, pretty much told me, yeah, it's a good career path, but just understand that until you're an E7, you're pretty much sweeping the floors. And I'm a corporal.
Really?
So I'm like, that's a long way away. So I don't know. I almost did it. I had to do an essay. It was like, well, here's the next step. You got to do an essay. I want to say it was a pretty lengthy essay. And I'm like, yeah. I just kept thinking about, holy shit, I'm sweeping the floors until I'm like an E7. That's when you start doing, field ops and all the fun stuff. I'm like, I just don't know what else I want to do. So, I got out. Looking back, that would probably have been a pretty damn good career choice to go counter intel, I think.
I know a couple guys that have done it, and they love it. They love doing it. They said it's not what a lot of people think it is, but it's definitely an interesting job. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to look back and to like regret some of that stuff. I know you mentioned before, like not being able to go to combat, and I know a lot of guys that get out and deal with that, and they talk about like their service was a waste of time, or they got fucked or whatever, and some guys have issues with it when they get out. Like I don't know. And it's easy for me to be like, it's not a big deal because I did get to go, I got to go and do that stuff, but it really isn't, right. It's like one of those, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, like almost getting shot in the face is not that cool. And, it's not. Yeah, and really when I get it. I totally get it. Cause when I first came in, I was like, man, I'm not going to get to go to Iraq. And when I was part of that ITV EFSS project, they put me on that because they didn't know what it was, and I was a new guy, and they're like, yeah, send him over here to go do that. And then my name got put down on a roster to deploy. But I'm on this other program, and they're like, well, what do you want to do? And which is crazy, right? They're asking a PFC, like, what do you want to do? I was like, well, honestly, I'd like to get to Iraq before the war's over, so I can come back and work on this anytime. Like, I'd like to go over here and do this. They're like, that's cool, but you're not going. I'm like, okay. So for the first 3 years I was in, all my buddies and stuff were deploying, and I'm like, man, like, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss the war and stuff like that. And so I get that feeling. But like regretting anything, I wanted to be infantry when I came in, I think it would have been a cool job, but I wanted to be an assaultman. I was very specific. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an assaultman. But after coming in the Marine Corps, I was like, holy shit. If I had became an assaultman, I would have been a Lance Corporal for sure at 4 years. Those dudes never get promoted. And like, what a different lifestyle that would have been. and I've gotten to do some great stuff as a JTAC and stuff. So it's like hard for me to look back and complain or be mad that I didn't get the thing that I really wanted to do, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about your ultra marathon running. You're really into that, which is I think all you guys that do that stuff is just insane, you know? As someone on the outside looking in, it's what a crazy one. Like, how do you get into it? For those that don't know, I'm trying to pull your stats up. You said you've done like over four 100 milers, 350 milers, 20 plus 50Ks all in 5 years. I
Yeah.
don't get it, man. I don't get it. How do you get it? How do you get started in that? And you're like, you know what? I'm gonna go run 100 miles today.
I don't know, man. It doesn't make sense, does it? Um, God, yeah, just it does make sense. I remember thumbing through the TV one weekend and seeing something on Discovery Channel about a lady that was running 100 miles, and I think I gave it about 20 seconds attention and said, she's batshit crazy. There's no way. Um, and didn't think 2 seconds about it. And then fast forward maybe 5 or 10 years later, and I don't know how the stars aligned. I think my daughter running cross country kind of got me back into running, just because it was something that we could do together.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go and pick her up. This was like when she was in 7th grade running, middle school cross country. When I would go and pick her up for a cross country practice, I would end up sitting there for like an hour, and I'm like, damn, I mean, this is a great opportunity to get out and at least walk. So then, I would get out and try to walk, and then I would see all these kids like running. I'm like, well, shit, I can't walk. I mean, I got to at least run with them and, try to do something proactive here. So then I started running, and, man, I don't know. It's just a weird deal. I would do like the 5K a year since I got out of the Marine Corps, off and on, not like every single year, but I would at least try to do like 5K, maybe like the local hometown 5K and stuff. And I would look at the people that were running the 10K, and I was like, that's stupid. 5K, I asked for like 2 days. My legs are sore. I'm going to go home and get on the recliner, and I'm not going to do shit all weekend because I did a 5K, and I was proud of that. I just couldn't imagine doing a 10K. So I think when I finally talked my daughter into doing a 10K, and of course she was doing middle school cross country, which is 2 miles. They don't even do 3 miles, high school. So 2 miles in middle school. I talked her into doing a 10K, which is a little over 6 miles. She was pretty nervous, and I was really nervous, like, holy shit, this is double what I normally run once a year. And it was tough. I mean, looking back, those were some of my most painful races, just because when you step up to a new level, your body's like, what in the hell are you doing? And wants to shut down and chafe and just blister and all kind of stuff. 10K was pretty tough, though. And once we did that, then I talked her into doing a half marathon, which was 13 miles. And that was really tough. Pretty much made her want to stop running altogether. So looking back, it probably wasn't the smartest decision to talk your 8th grader into doing a half marathon. But I kept at it. She kind of laid back and, unfortunately didn't want to run as much. So that wasn't good, but I kept going. And to be honest, and I hate to admit this, I'm in my late 40s, and this was probably 33, 34 years old, but I was already on like cholesterol medicine. I had high cholesterol. I had got up to about 225, 230 pounds. I did a lot of hunting and fishing, which when you do a lot of hunting and fishing, if that's your hobby, you're not necessarily exercising a lot. And I had got up to about 230. Cholesterol medicine, was having headaches, just, definitely saw what the future, entailed. And when I started running, and I had bad knees, of course, I had the bad knees, that whole thing where you say, I can't run, I have bad knees. Well, I had bad knees. And when I started running, it just, consistency is where I started losing the weight, just basically running every single night, even if it was just 2 miles or 3 miles, but trying to run every single night, because you got to have at least neutrality with your calories. You can't take in more calories than what you're expending. That's where you start gaining weight. So there needs to be a deficit to lose weight, but at least worst case, neutrality. And I was putting myself kind of in a deficit to where I was expending more calories than I was taking in. And I was still eating. I mean, I didn't go on any kind of diet. I've never been on any kind of crazy diet. But I was running 2 or 3 miles every night. And doing that, I started seeing the weight just tick off, 1 pound here, 1 pound there. So I finally, after about 3 or 4 months, I'm not talking about years, I'm talking about 3 or 4 months, I dropped probably 20 pounds and came off all my medicine. So no cholesterol medicine, which is expensive as shit. Crestor and all that, it's just incredibly high. Come off all the medicine, started feeling better, no more headaches. Had to get new clothes, which was a great feeling. And just started feeling really good about myself. I mean, just about every aspect. Now, I wasn't doing anything crazy. No crazy bad diets, just consistent every single day, either in the morning or at night, usually at night. And then maybe one long run every weekend where I was trying to do 6, 10, 15 miles, maybe on a Saturday. So maybe 2 months after I ran the half marathon with my 8th grader, I did something really stupid, like incredibly dumb, that I don't recommend that anyone do. I signed up for a 50K, not a road 50K. I mean, it's one thing to do a marathon on the road, flat, or generally flat with a couple of hills, but do 31 miles at a state park with a lot of mountains. So you're talking about 5,000 foot of vertical gain. So you have elevation change, which is all the up and then all of the down, but we pretty much measure all the up. So how much climbing are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
So 5,000 foot of climb, you got to figure that, I don't know, are you familiar with First Sergeant's Hill at San Mateo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's probably 600 feet of climb. So we're talking about 5,000 foot of climb in 31 miles. So there's a lot of climbing. A lot of hills that are like First Sergeant's Hill, and then you get done, maybe run flat, maybe run down, maybe then another First Sergeant's Hill. So maybe, 6, 7, 8 First Sergeant's Hill during this 31 miles. So it's pretty tough. That first 50K, I got about 10, 12 miles into it with the climbing, and my legs pretty much just stopped working, like totally cramped up. And I was walking sideways, and all these people were passing me. And I'm like, oh shit, this is so embarrassing. But I couldn't walk. Like literally, I could not take a step. And somebody gave me a couple of salt tablets, and about 10 minutes later, they finally started to work a little bit. But I think the cutoff for that race was 9 hours, which seems like a lot to go 31 miles. A lot of like hiking and whatnot, especially when you're climbing those hills. But I think I got done with that first race in like 8 hours and 52 minutes. Like literally, I was coming really close to the cutoff time. But I finished. There was this huge sense of accomplishment. I had all the endorphins, all the dopamine. It lasted for 2 or 3 days. I'm like, holy shit, man, this is fantastic. So then did another couple of trail races. And I found that the trails were a lot easier on my knees, like no knee pain whatsoever, which was huge. So I stayed on the trails and pretty much just totally got off the roads, and luckily where I live in Birmingham, we have 4 or 5 areas where we have a ton of trails. We have a 15,000 acre state park at Mountain State Park, and there's 60 miles of trails. So like you can't run the same thing, over and over unless you just really try to. So it's plenty of new stuff to run. And that's 5 miles from my house. I'm really fortunate with that. And then there's a lot of races here, but just started getting into it, man. And started doing 50Ks here and 50Ks there. I do a 10 miler or 20 miler. And then finally got to a point within a year to where I threw my name in the hat for a 50 miler. And that 50 miler, again, it was another mountain race. So there's probably 8,000 foot of vertical climb. And I remember that almost killed me because I only peed like once during 50 miles, which ain't good. I got to the end around mile 40, and I felt like I had to pee really bad. And sorry for your audience having to listen to this, but I felt like I had to urinate really, really bad. And every time I would like pull off to the side and try, nothing would happen. And then finally, like around mile 48, it finally happened a little bit, but it was like almost blood red. So I always had like complete kidney failure because I didn't know what I was doing. So there's a lot of strategy and a lot of stuff that you need to know before you start doing these things, obviously. But yeah, I was pretty close to rhabdo, which is like a kidney failure, just because again, I didn't really know what I was doing. You can, in a lot of cases, drink too much water, and if you're not replacing your salt intake, you get what they call hyponatremia, and that be like way worse than not drinking any water at all. And start learning. So the learning curve could be pretty painful, but luckily I got through that one. And then I think it was the next year I maybe did 4 or 5 more 50Ks, another 50 miler, and then did my first 100 miler, which again was another step up. And that step up is always really painful. But yeah, my first 100 miler, I finished it. So that was pretty surprising because a lot of people don't finish their first 100 milers. A lot of DNF, which is what we call did not finish. So usually the attrition rate's probably about 30%. So if 300 people start, we'll say 200 people finish. So you'll lose about 100 people. So my first 100, I got really lucky and finished. I think the cutoff was 30 hours, and I finished in 29 hours and 20 minutes. But man,
But you finished,
I finished, and they say comparison is kind of the thief of joy. So you try to compete against yourself, and ultimately you're just trying to finish. That's kind of the ultimate goal, and then you get these cool buckles. Let's see if I can see. So I don't know if you can see that, but that's like the buckles. So for ultra marathons, you get these cool belt buckles, which some people wear, some people don't. But that's kind of the trophy. And a lot of times, at pre-race briefings for other 100 milers that you run, everybody will wear their buckles from their different races. But that's kind of what it's all about. Just finishing.
That's cool,
you're not
man.
trying to really beat the fast kids that are 110 pounds. That are natural runners, maybe cross country teams or cross country kids at college and Division I athletes. You're not necessarily trying to beat those guys or girls, because there's some freaking studs that run, male and female. You're not necessarily trying to beat the next girl or gal. You're just trying to beat yourself, and you're trying not DNF. And it gets pretty low. I mean, there's a lot of lows and a lot of highs, but you just, keep moving forward. Continue to march is a great term for Marines. Continue to march. It's just one step at a time. So, yeah, I don't know how I got in it, man, but I thoroughly enjoy it. There's a little bit of sadism involved, I'm pretty sure, because you go through significant pain. I think and I'm kind of joking a little bit here, but I'm not. But I think pretty much everybody I've met that runs ultra marathons have some pretty, big demons that they're doing. It just doesn't make sense otherwise. You go through so much pain, but to come out on the other side is an incredible feeling. And there's a lot of camaraderie. It's a very close-knit community. Some of these races, you have athletes from all over the world. So I don't know how I got into it, but I really enjoy it. I mean, it takes a lot of training to stay on top of your game. It seems like you can put in 3 good months of solid training. You can have a really good training block and then get injured. And then like 2 weeks later, you feel like you've lost it all. So it's like easy. But yeah.
Yeah, you're living on the extreme there, I think anytime you're like living on the extreme edge like that it's like you have to constantly be training, right? To maintain that kind of level of athleticism or ability?
It's stupid how quick you can lose it, and some of these guys that have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, they have a really good base. So they could go out for 3, 4, 5 weeks and get right back into it without a lot of effort. But I haven't been doing it that long. So if I get injured, like if I twist my ankle and I'm like, I'm going to take it easy this week, like literally the next week I can feel it. And it takes a lot of effort to feel like you're getting caught back up. So, yeah, it's constant. So, every day that goes by, like today, I had a pretty crazy morning. And normally I run in the afternoons or early evening. But because I want to be on your podcast more, I chose not to run today. Mentally, I'm like, oh shit, I got to really catch up tomorrow morning, and I will. But yeah, you can't really take any days off, man. It's crazy how that works. Like David Goggins, who's one of my favorite people on earth, says, friction builds growth. So the more you are suffering and the more you feel like you're suffering, that's all progress. And, I constantly run on tired legs. My legs constantly hurt. I feel like, they're dead. I'm like climbing hills and stuff, and my legs don't, want to work. But then when I finally get to that point right before a race and you start dialing your mileage back and you go for maybe 40 or 50 miles a week, and these are mountain miles. So I do a lot of running park, so there's a lot of climbing in those 40 or 50 miles. But when you start dialing your mileage back, and your legs start recovering, and you're like, holy crap, and then you get springy, and then your confidence is there, and that's where you want to be. But it's just constant, so you just always feel like you're beat up. A lot of times you feel like you're almost have the flu because your body is just constantly trying to adapt and build itself. But yeah, man, and I've listened to a couple of your podcasts. I think Wesley Trumpler podcast. So Wesley out on the West Coast representing MERCA, which is the Marine Ultra Running Club of America. I think we have 550 Marines that are current members. Our only requirement is that you run a ultra marathon, which technically we'll say that it's 31 miles, but we can talk if you've done, say, 28 or 29 or 30 miles. But most races go from like a 26 mile road marathon to like a 50K, which is usually like trail race. So that's really the only requirement, that you got an honorable discharge or a medical discharge, wherever you want to.
Are there any active duty guys in the club?
Yeah,
well, I guess Wesley was and Fosberg, right? Isn't Fosberg part of the club?
Yeah, Fosberg. So me and Josh ran the Cruel Jewel, which is this monstrosity. I don't know. You can see the difference.
Yeah.
The Cruel Jewel is in the North Georgia mountains. It's actually, that course actually goes right by where the Rangers do their mountain training. The elevation is, I want to say, 30,000 foot of gain.
Jesus Christ, dude. That's crazy.
The cutoff is 48 hours. And me and my buddy who signed up together, we ran that whole freaking race. And it's 106 miles on paper, but my Garmin said it was 113, which I believe. But 106 miles on paper, and we ran that whole race together. So you better like somebody if you do that.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We actually, we would go through highs and lows at different times and kind of pick each other up. But there's a ton of climbing in that race. And so I think we finished in 40 hours and 20 minutes. And the last, I want to say we were probably around mile 100 and realized that we still had about 5 or 6 miles to go. And that was probably the roughest point of the whole race. You think, you're getting so close, you can get that energy. But that was like, oh my God, I got like a 10K. So your mind starts telling you, hey, you big dummy, you can't hardly move anymore, but you still got to do a 10K.
Mm-hmm.
And then you 10K, oh my God. And so literally we almost wanted to quit with like 5 or 6 miles left, which is just stupid when you think about it. But I mean, that's how broken you are. And I don't know. Took a couple of Motrin there at the end, and then with about 2 or 3 miles left, we start sprinting like idiots and finished pretty strong. But that was a tough race. But yeah, Trumpler, Joshua, who's doing all kind of crazy stuff. So yeah, he's in America for sure.
Yeah, he ran from he recently or like 6 months ago or something like that ran from Paris Island to Camp Lejeune. You know,
Yeah, I can't do the road stuff. I mean, I just can't. Mentally, it's just, I don't know. I'm just not a big road fan. So I give kudos to those guys that can run 20 or 30 miles on the road. I just can't do it.
Yeah. I just hate running in general. I hated it when I was in the Marines. I was never a good runner in the Marines. I was just like, I could hike all day, but man, running was just not it for me.
Yeah, I didn't really like it when I was in the Marines because you're always hung over, right? I mean, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times that we ran in the grunts to where I was sober. I know that sounds horrible, but it's just how it is.
Hey, everybody's experience is different. I was married right at the beginning, so I was like in housing and living like the married dude's life with a kid and stuff. So I actually partied way less after I joined the Marines because in Indiana. I grew up next to Purdue University, so I partied all the time there.
And it wasn't really partying. We would just all sit around the common areas and drink beer.
Yeah.
So drink beer until like 1 a.m, just watching stupid movies and shit, like Toots. Just things looking back were just kind of like, that was, just stupid stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, what is? Oh, go ahead.
I said I'm 100% sure things haven't changed that much.
No,
but
not at all.
That.
Not at all.
And then, you were always in good with your doc, and there may or may not. I think statute of limitations have well expired over 30 years, but there may or may not have been IVs going on back in those days.
Oh, that still happens. That's still a thing. We take it as a training opportunity to train on each other, putting in IVs.
Hey,
dude, what is?
Okay, maybe not Tracy, maybe somebody else, but I remember somebody making us do IVs on each other as training. So yeah.
Yeah, we've definitely done that. That was something else we used to do at Anglico just in general on a pretty regular basis, is take turns giving each other IVs and stuff. Just to, you don't want the first time you're putting an IV on somebody to be while you're getting shot at or something like that. So, dude,
not really easy.
Yeah. What a small world that we both know. Offutt, Trumpler, and Fosberg. So yes, I deployed with Fosberg on the advisor team in 2013. I deployed with Trumpler with 3-6 in 2011, and then I was stationed with Tracy at Anglico in 2000. When did I get there? 2014. How that is crazy that we both know the same people, and you were in the 90s. So it's like that makes it even crazier.
Yeah, it's a super small world. The Marine Corps is small anyway.
For sure.
But, small world. So, yeah. And funny, when you get out of the Marine Corps, it's like, can you really ever get away from it? Not that you'd want to, or not that most people would want to, but like my next door neighbor, retired lieutenant colonel, and he was I don't want to say the scribe, but an aide for Al Gray.
Oh, crazy! So, the colonel
commandant before Monday, and I think after Monday, Krulak actually was the president for Birmingham Southern College, so he's here in Birmingham with me as well. So it's always, if you look hard enough, there's Marine Corps really close to wherever you're at.
Yeah, for sure. Some people keep it hidden, but you know, you can always tell. You know, you can tell sometimes. You're like, they say something particular or they act a particular way, and you're like, oh, were you in the Marines?
Yeah, you know, and I'm not, you know, I'm not the, you know, I say I'm not the t-shirt guy. I've got the Merca shirt on just, you know, because that was pretty much the premise for the podcast. But I've got the Merca shirt on. I've got the Merca banner that I just put up for the podcast. I don't have that up in my office, just if anybody's wondering. But I'm not the sticker guy, you know. I'm not the guy that wears the crazy Marine Corps shirts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy talking about the Marine Corps with Marines.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm very prideful in the Marine Corps. I think there is no doubt that collectively the Marine Corps is one of the better branches in the world, not just, you know, the United States, but I take a lot of pride in it. Knowing, you know, what I've done and what I see other people that have done and are currently doing. One thing about the Marine Corps, it stands the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
Things that I'm seeing and listening to your podcast, man, is a breath of fresh air. Seeing the you know, camaraderie and the commitment and the pride and the diligence, you know, the work ethic. I mean, it's I'm glad to see it. So I really enjoy listening to your podcast, man.
Man, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on too. And like you're saying, you know, it's just for me, I enjoy doing the podcast just because I'm a military kid and stuff like that, and I just kind of enjoyed military history and everything like that over the years. So it's cool to one, I can relate. I've dabbled in a lot of stuff in the military. I was with MLG as a mechanic. I was with artillery. I deployed with the infantry. I did all these different things. I've worked with like recon guys. I've done a lot of interesting stuff, and I've had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of stuff. So I enjoy doing the podcast because I feel like I can ask the right questions to kind of bring anybody's story out, just because I know a little bit about a lot, you know, instead of a lot about something just a little. But yeah, man, it's a great time for sure.
I was going to ask, you know, and this is me 30 years later, not knowing a ton of what's going on these days, but they still do the shellback ceremonies, right?
They do. You might not like to hear this, but I opted out of doing it on my deployment when we crossed the equator.
Probably not a bad decision.
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't because I was so fucking pissed at the Navy people on my first MEU. I was like, dude, fuck all these people. Like, I mean, you're seeing it in the news now where people are committing suicide, and you're getting these stories of people just being miserable. Being on ship as a junior Marine or not even a junior, I was a staff sergeant. E6 and below, you get treated like shit. And like, why are you walking in this hallway? You don't rate to walk in this hallway. Like, fuck you, man. You know, you're getting barely any food. You're being starved out. While the officers and chiefs and shit are getting like as much food as they want, super nice steaks, like crazy stuff. All the enlisted people, all the lower enlisted people, E6 and below, are eating like shit. And then on top of that, the Navy, I have the least favorable impression of the Navy than I do of any other branch, and that's after working with them and seeing how many of them, and this isn't everybody, obviously this isn't everybody, but there's the attitude of this isn't my job was rampant. You ask someone a question, that's not my job. That's not my job. And I would see them fuck over Marines or try to fuck over Marines all the time. And I'm like, dude, fuck these guys. So when, I know I'm going off right now, when it came around, they're like, hey, we're doing this shellback, ceremony or whatever, the crossing of the equator, you can opt out. I guess, I don't know, who knows, at some point someone made a thing where it's hazing, so you can opt out if you want. And I'm like, dude, fuck them. I'm like, I'm not gonna bow down to some fucking sailor and do all these bullshit little hazing tasks for him to earn their little thing. Like, I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan, and fucking that was it for me. Like, I don't need this. And this is before that deployment, if someone would have been like, dude, you going to do the crossing the equator ceremony, the shellback ceremony, I would have been all about it. I'm all about that stuff. Like the traditional military experience. I want the all that cool stuff. Like going to the ball is a cool thing. Doing a dining in ceremony is a cool thing because it's that like unique experience that kind of makes the military part of what it is. But after seeing how shitty those sailors were and how I just was so disgruntled to the point, and I haven't talked about this in a long time, but I have talked about it on the podcast before, to the point where they go, hey man, when I got off that deployment, they're like, hey, you're going back to the MEU as permanent personnel. You're going on another MEU. And I told them, I go, if you send me over there, I'm getting out. If you send me to the MEU again, I'm getting out. And they sent me to the MEU and I got out. And I was like, fuck this. I have been in and done too much shit to get treated this way by these fucking losers that haven't done anything. And that includes the Marines E6 or E7 and above that thought that they somehow rated this special treatment and kind of fell into that Navy mentality by the end of the deployment. You know what I'm saying? So no, I've crossed the equator twice on ship, and both times I said, fuck them, I'm not doing it.
No, I totally get that, man. I totally get that. You know, we hadn't pretty much done anything but just training, so I totally get where you were at.
It's just, it wasn't even like, oh, I've been to Iraq, I'm too good for this, or I've been to Afghanistan, I'm too good for this. It was the lack of basic human respect for other people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For like, I had to argue with the first class, which is their E6, about they were closing the chow line early while there was a huge line of Marines waiting to eat still. And they're like, nope, we're closing. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, what are you talking about? It's not the end of chow the bell hasn't even rang yet. And none of these guys have eaten. And you're going to tell them that they can't eat when we already get not enough food anyways. And I ended up having to go and argue with this dude's chief about why these fucking Marines should eat. Like, that's my experience on ship. You know what I'm saying? And living in the worst conditions, it was like 110 or 115 Marines, 3 showers, maybe 2 showers, 2 toilets, and a urinal, and like 3 or 4 sinks. Are you fucking kidding me, man? Like, it's everything about it was bullshit. And I was like, fuck these dudes. I don't like any of them, I won't say that. There were some cool Navy guys, but for the most part, I was like, fuck them. I don't even want to like be around them.
Yeah, man. Ship life's something else.
Sorry for all the sailors out there that may be listening to this, but that's just how I felt at the end of that deployment. I was like, I can't wait to get away from this fucking ship and all these sailors, which they probably hated us too,
Yeah, I don't remember me having a choice.
Probably not in the 90s.
No. Yeah, totally different times. And Tracy was a shellback, so he was one of the hazers. But yeah, I mean, if you like being on your knees on non-skid for 8 or 9 hours all day, it was great. Mm-hmm. Eating out of a bowl on the floor like a dog. So yeah, I don't think you missed too much, but I was just curious that they still did that.
Oh, they do it. It was people were surprised, and I was very vocal about it. I'm like, and actually it was crazy. The MEU ops chief, the lieutenant colonel ops chief was also the same way. Like, fuck this. Anybody that doesn't want to do it, you don't have to do it. He's like, this is stupid. And I'm like, fuck yeah, man. Fuck yeah. And actually, I think at least half my team ended up not doing it. It was, again, if we would have respected the Navy people, then it wouldn't have been an issue. But when you get disrespected for 7 months, you get treated like shit for 7 months. It's like, fuck this. I mean, and I doubt today's Navy is the same as the Navy people that you saw. You know what I'm saying? Like, I look back on like the old Navy, like when I thought before the military, when I thought of the Navy, my mind went to like the old war movies like Midway and stuff like that, where these dudes are like fighting the ships. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're out there like doing shit, and like, I don't know, it just seemed like it was a kind of a cool job. But after seeing how the people were, it was like, this is fucking ridiculous. And I just couldn't do it, man. So I hate to end it on a bad note like that, but we do got to wrap it up. I appreciate you coming on, man. I really appreciate that you're a fan of the podcast. I think it's super cool. I think it's awesome that you've done these crazy marathons. Maybe one day I'll get out and run some more. I don't know if I'll knock out 100 miles, but you know what? That's a feat that very few people can say they've ever done. So that's, kudos to you. Do you have any kind of like contact info or anything you want to put out there, social media for yourself or for the Marine Ultra Runners Club of America?
Yeah, Merca, is I think it's just Google Merca, MURCA, Marine Ultra Running. You'll find us. We have a Facebook group, Instagram, old school www, all that good stuff. So again, if you like to run, and you're considering doing any kind of endurance or long distance stuff, we'd love to have you. Have a ton of discounts. All the gear that we use, Hoka running shoes, all the anti-chafing stuff, GPS watches. So if you get into it, definitely, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to join Merca. You just have to be a Marine and run a 50K or more. And we'll give you a bunch of discounts, and you'll have a lot of camaraderie, and probably can find pacers and crew and all the people that you need to run these things. So we'd love to have you. And then also, real quick, didn't talk about Iwo Jima, but just to add insult to injury about all the good stuff that I got to do in my 4 years. I got really lucky and got to go to Iwo Jima for the 50th commemorative ceremony.
Oh, wow.
So, with a bunch of World War II veterans that were in wheelchairs, and we had to carry them up on the gangplanks in their wheelchairs, which was hard as shit, but absolutely worth it. We do it 20. But walking around Iwo Jima with World War II veterans, they picked 2 from each platoon. Got freaking so lucky on that. And if you ever get a chance to go to Iwo Jima, it will be one of the most emotional. And if you're a Marine and you get emotional about Marine shit, now if you're a douchebag and you were in the Marines and you don't like talking about the Marines, I can't help you. But if you love the Marine Corps and you have a esprit de corps and you care about that kind of stuff, if you go to Iwo Jima, I swear to God, it will be one of the most emotional experiences that you have in your life. You can feel the old Corps. It's unexplainable. You can just feel it. And I'm not an emotional guy. I'm just telling you.
I believe you, man.
Tell me that you didn't feel that, because I promise you that will happen. So spend the $2,000 or $3,000 and go on the tour or whatever, but go to Iwo Jima, take a tour of the island, go through the bunkers, all that stuff, and it will be one of the best trips of your life. So I got real lucky. But
we floated. We actually floated by Iwo Jima on my first meal, and that feeling, that like seeing it, I was like, man, that's it. That's it, man. Bomb. It's crazy to even see it. I might break your heart a little bit here, but we had to. This is another thing that fucking pissed me off. We had to send. We didn't have to. They were going to send some Marines ashore to climb, to walk around a little bit and climb Mount Suribachi, go up to the peak and check it out and stuff. And have you heard this story?
Yeah,
man.
I'd have been pissed too.
Man, so for the people that haven't heard it, what happened was we had to pick 2 people from each like section. There was not everybody could go, so only like a handful of people got to go. I put in Joel Flores as his name because he was my comm chief when I was with Anglico, and like one of the best radio operator I worked with. He was just outside of his element, or not outside of his element. He was outside of the box thinker. Like he wouldn't let this comm is down was not an option. He would figure out why and try a different path or whatever. And I put his name up, and the ops chief that we had said, nope, we got to send the fucking brand new guy, PFC, whatever his name was. And I was like, okay, I get, junior Marines first, whatever, but this is like one of those situations like chow. This is like a once in a life opportunity, and I think like sending someone that really earned it should be priority, but whatever. So this PFC gets to go. And Sergeant Major Black, the current Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, was the Muse Sergeant Major. And They got to Iwo Jima and they started hiking up, and too many fucking losers, and I'm going to call them that, fucking losers, fell out of the hike up Mount Suribachi carrying their little day packs with snacks and water. The same fucking mountain that Marines fought and died up. They fell out, and so Sergeant Major Black, the current Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, fucking shut it down, and no one got to go to the top. They stopped like halfway up, and they were IVing dudes and stuff like that, including that PFC that we sent. You know, everyone on ship was fucking shocked. We were all like, are you kidding me? Like, when we heard, we're like, no way. No way. They're like, people came back, they're like, you don't understand how humid it was. I'm like, what would you have done if this was a mission and we had to go attack that hill? Oh, it's too humid, guys. We can't do it. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You're not ready to hike up a fucking mountain? Like, it's not like you're climbing Mount Whitney. You know, it's not that big.
That wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all.
Can you believe that though?
Yeah, that's bullshit for sure.
A lot of us were like, hey man, if they fell out, whoever fell out should get a page 11, 100%. Yeah. There should be some kind of paperwork because that's shameful, man. If that doesn't motivate you to keep going, I don't know what would. Yeah,
it sounds like there was maybe some alcohol involved or something.
No, dude, we were coming off ship. We were on ship. Like, there was no reason. There was zero reason. They should have been fully hydrated. They literally carried a day pack with snacks for the day and water. And they fucking couldn't make it up the hill, man. Like,
that will live forever, man.
I would have been, imagine if you were one of the guys that got chosen and you're watching all these dudes fall out and then they tell you, nope, guys, we can't go because of all these losers. I would have been there like, you motherfucker, you know, like just.
Yeah.
So 2 shitty stories to end it, but it was a good podcast overall, dude. I really appreciate you coming on. People check out the Marine Ultra Runners Club of America. As always, check out my website, jkramergraphics.com. My Instagram is @formeractionguys and @formeractionnews. Hit me up there, and that's it.
All right, man. Have a good one.